All right, so I think what we'll do is maybe I'll start off with a few starter questions for our distinguished panelists. And then, in the meantime, if you've got questions about, do put them up on Pigeonhole. Then we'll go through the ones that are really burning. Okay, take your time to upvote those as well. Okay, so maybe if I could start off first to give Terence some time to get a breather, right? So for Mr. Xia, if I could ask, based on your experience, right, what types of charities are most ripe for digitalization? And which aspects of their operations do you feel are most in need of a process like that?
Okay. Okay. Thanks. So the question is, which type of charities are ripe for digitalization? I'll answer that question first. Just kind of, my short answer will be all charities are. Fact is, digital is ubiquitous today. Everybody is exposed to digital technologies. In fact, you carry in your pocket every day. It's the way we live our lives today. So every charity should actually look at, how digital technologies can actually help them become better. And there are many areas. The traditional areas are usually in finance, HR, and so on, where you use that to manage finance records, human employee records, and so on. But we're seeing digital technologies being pushed to the front in terms of you or charities interfacing with your donors, your volunteers, and even your clients. This is where I think one of the areas are getting quite useful, quite prevalent now. For example, and many of you know I chair the National Volunteer and Philanthropy Center, NVPC. They just launched the Digital Kampong, the new version of Giving.sg. In fact, you don't even need to have your digital assets. You just need to use Giving.sg to fundraise, to reach out to donors, to reach out to volunteers. And in fact, I've noticed a phenomenon quite interesting as I was going through it, looking at how some charities creatively market their donation products. So for example, I just want to raise $888 to take care of this client for X days. So it's $888. It's a small number. But as a donor, I see, wow, if I put 100, it makes a lot of difference. Or I just want 8,888 or 500 or whatever. They kind of break into different parts to target donors, especially the mass donors, who may feel that, if you ask for $1 million, $2 million, my donation may not make a lot of difference. But there is some effect there, and we've seen that. And so as a result, about 100 million a year goes through Giving.sg today. Other solution providers at iShine Cloud as well, they provide the back-end side of donor management as well as volunteer management. So technically, you don't actually have to do it yourself. You can actually either rent through subscription or you can buy and put it in. And I can go on for various areas, but that's just my initial response to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Christian.
Yeah. So I agree completely. I think all charities can benefit from digitization. I think for charities that are also, I would say, larger, obviously because you are larger, then when you look at the cost of implementing a system divided by the number of people that you have, then of course the ROI might work out a lot better. So I personally come from a larger charity, and we have made certain decisions around investing in things like Salesforce to better manage our case management system. And we have found that because of that investment, the time savings involved in, for example, doing reports, because as an agency that regularly has to report to our stakeholders, the time that it now takes to prepare all those reports, because we have a platform, has been reduced tremendously. And that all translates into real man-hour savings which of course, you can compute, quite easily in terms of the real value. So I think if you're a larger charity, I think if you think about the potential man-hour savings when you invest in a system like this, I think that provides quite a clear and strong case for investing in digitization. I think the other experience that we have is we have found that for some of our programs, especially when it's targeting younger clients whose preference for engagement is really through a digital format. So we have a particular program where we are reaching out to youth for mental health needs. And the problem statement was this, right? For many of our youths, when do they start thinking about, let's say, suicide ideation or when they get depressed? They actually usually think about it in the middle of the night. And when you ask yourself, how many services are available and what support is available to them in the middle of the night when they are going through all those thoughts, then that became, for us, very clear that we had to adopt a digital approach to meeting that need, to making it accessible for them to get some form of help so that, we are able to meet them at the point where they are really requiring some kind of support. So in those cases, again, if you're a charity that, because of the work that you're doing and the profile of people that you're trying to reach out to, sometimes you will find that actually digitization is really not an option. I mean, it is you have to do it, right? If you're going to be effective in reaching out to those profile of people. Yep.
Thank you. Please.
Hello. All right. Interrupting you for a while because I thought hearing what Chin Song and Christian has mentioned, I think it's very clear. Chin Song is talking about using iShine and SaaS, software as a service, and Christian mentioned about Salesforce. I think in my perspective, the charity should not consider owning or having physical boxes or data centers and all that because it's just too costly for maintenance from a charity perspective. As much as possible, you should go to SaaS, in my perspective. Right? Although it's a little bit different from the good old days. Yep.
Yeah. You can interrupt me all day long. It's fine. Makes my job easier. No, but thank you for the very insightful comments. I thought I really like the bit about how the bigger charities actually can benefit more from digitalization because they can spread the cost over. But then I think Mr. Sia also mentioned that for smaller charities you can kind of rent or use SaaS type solutions as well, right? And also the idea about how you could have depends on who's your target audience. If it's a younger crowd, then those may be more ripe for digitalization as well if they haven't already done so. Yeah, very nice. Okay, so let me ask another question, and then we'll go to the ones from the audience. In your opinion, what role does governance play in the digital transformation of charities, right? And what do you think is the most critical governance issue as it relates to digitalization? Anybody?
Okay, I'll give it a go. So I think when it comes to governance, I think I was here in the morning session. I'm not sure if, I'm sure many of you were. And they were presenting on the various types of risks. And one of the risks that was mentioned was actually relevance risks, right? And so while most of the time, as a board with good governance practice, of course, when you embark on a digitization journey, it's important to count the costs. Like what's this going to involve, right? And not just in terms of the implementation costs, but the total cost of owning the system over a period of time, which includes many other factors. So there's something that needs to be considered. But I think the other thing that we need to consider is what's the cost of not doing it, right? Because over time, if we don't embark on this journey, there is that possibility of then becoming increasingly less relevant to the needs of the community and to the way things are, operating. Especially when these days, when we think about partnerships, collaboration, data becomes very important. And the only way for you to have data is when you have already embarked on a digitization journey. So I think I think for governance, clearly there are things that you want to make sure you want to mitigate the risk, but part of that risk is really thinking longer term. If you don't embark on this, what is it going to cost the organization? So I think that's something, for all board members to think about. If you're not embarking on a digitization journey already, it's important to ask yourself that question: what's the possible risk of not doing so? Today.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. My view would be I would perhaps offer a different, another perspective to that on importance of governance. I mean, why do boards exist? They exist because they're there to ensure that the charities fulfill their purpose, the raison d'etre for why a charity is set up. Because oftentimes, we can say that's the purpose, but when you get down to the lower level details, we could be doing a lot of things that is not quite aligned to the purpose. And the reason why governance has to exist, and the governance structure, governance model, and disciplines, is so that the decision-making process in the organization is aligned to that purpose. And if there is a vision of the charity that it wants to achieve a vision by a certain time frame, 5 years, 10 years, in support of its purpose, then governance is necessary. Governance means the decision-making process of the charity that it makes continuously to achieve that purpose. Therefore, when it comes to digital, how does the digital aspect of charity align to its purpose and its vision? How relevant is it? And governance is important because, as Christians say, you need to, even down to the cost, does it make sense? Good decisions needs to be made with regards to investments in digital technologies. And it must be aligned to ultimately where the charity is going. It could be how you care for the beneficiary or your clients. It could be how you engage your stakeholders, your donors, your volunteers, and so on. But ultimately, all boards, all leaders in the organization would have some view, a picture of the future, what we call the desired future reality for the charity. And then the question is, how do we ensure that our digital initiatives, strategy, and so on, can support and enable the organization to achieve that? So even NCSS has come up with this thing called the IDPSS. You have heard about IDPSS? Oh no. Okay, 1, 2, okay, good. 3, okay, good. I need to tell them. It's the, I think, industry digital plan for social sector. So you can go to NCS website, you download it. It has a whole handbook on how you go about digitalizing your charity. But it is fundamental. Governance is fundamental. Without governance is like your rudder, guiding the ship to go there, make decisions, go there. And if digital is an important part of a strategy, then it needs to be aligned to the vision and mission of the charity. Thank you.
Thank you.
I offer my view. I just want to mention about what Christian has spoken about as well. This morning's presentation, there were questions asked about BCP and ERM, which one first, right? So I want to mention that governance is the accountability of the board. You can delegate the responsibility, but you cannot delegate the accountability. As what Chin Song has mentioned, that the reality is the governance that is provided by the board will steer the ship wherever it's supposed to go. So to mention a little bit about digitalization in the perspective of ERM and also BCP is when you look at digitalization, right, you can simplify the management of risks through data integration, where it reduces the opportunity for misrepresentation. And it also allows you to use the term that was used in the earlier meeting was AI, but I think it really is the big data. When you have the digitalization journey, you can correlate the data better to provide you with trends and directions for where you will be or you could be, and so it helps you. And the BCP really is the outcome of the ERM that you want to make sure that you have BCP to ensure that you can continue your operation in times of disaster. So for example, in times of disaster, would you have the case information of your clients or beneficiaries? Would you be able to obtain those information to continue to serve your clients or your beneficiaries? So if you don't have, if you depend on pen and paper and you cannot reach your case note or case information, then you're stuck. Your business cannot continue. So that is really something that the board needs to think about to provide the governance around digitalization. Can you afford not to have BCP? Can you afford not to have ERM? All right, thanks.
Thank you. All right, so Christian, with the talking about in terms of governance, the risks of inaction, right, is important to think about. And then Mr. Sia was speaking about how your digitalization efforts should be aligned with your mission and help you propel you towards your vision. And then I believe Terence was also speaking about business continuity, right, as an important aspect of things as well. All right. Okay, we've got some interesting questions coming in. So here's one, which is, what are some of the digitalization initiatives that non-profits can adopt without much effort and resources? They want the low-hanging fruit. So what are some of the digitalization initiatives that non-profits can adopt without much effort and resources?
I can take a stab at that first.
Please.
I thought about this as we were going through the morning session, some of the notes that I've taken. As what Chin Siong has mentioned, giving.sg is an option, right? You don't have to build your own donation or payment platforms. You can just tap into giving.sg, link from your website and connect and you're done, okay? The other one that I thought is a low-hanging fruit, as many of us are familiar with ChatGPT now, is a fad now. You know what? ChatGPT can help you to copyright. It reduces the costs and the time to publishing as well. When you have a critical incident, you want to publish a statement out, ChatGPT can help you to craft a very nice first go. You just have to put in your point form, ask ChatGPT to write up a news brief or a memo, and they will do it. You can even tell it to revise it to your nuances that you like as well. So I think those are low-hanging fruits that you don't need to invest anything, and you can start using. All right.
I think it started as a pain point. So this is very, very early on in our digitization journey. I'm not sure how many of you all face a similar pain point, and that is transport claims for your staff. Right? I'm not sure, yeah. So in the past, when you, take, let's say, a cab for work, you have to keep the receipt, right? And then you submit the claim, and then how you submit the claim, you have to take the receipt, paste it on a piece of paper, right? Make sure you write all the details, and then you submit it to either HR or finance, and then they will process the claim. And that was a real pain point because we have got, for Care Corner, we've got a lot of social workers, and sometimes they do need to make house visits, and some of them on an urgent basis. And so then they will have all this like transport claims, right? Very painful process. Now, of course, if you think about, okay, what's the solution? Do we like create a transport claim solution? That would be quite costly, and I mean, then the question around like the ROI, does it make sense? So we did not take that approach, but what we did was very simple. In fact, we didn't create any system, but I would consider it as an early stage kind of form of digitization, and that is to actually subscribe to a Grab business account. Yeah, and that actually solved everything because we then, provided that as an option for people to use that Grab business account. And what Grab does is it consolidates all the usage, gives us the data, who took what ride, what trip, everything's all, and it just gives us a report. There's a small, of course, cost to it, but looking at the costs and the savings of all the man effort, and now that it's digital, actually it was worth it. So to me, it was a very, very low cost because we didn't create any platform, and it actually gave us a lot of productivity gain. Something as simple as that.
Yeah, and maybe I'll come from an internal process standpoint. For those who are bigger charities in this room, you realize after a while you have different systems. And then guess what? You got to transfer data from one to the next and the next and the next. This is where RPA comes in, robotic process automation, and encourage you all to look at it. A lot of times, if you are a legacy that's been, I beg your pardon, a charity that's been around for a long time, you would have a lot of legacy processes, and you have different systems for different things. And then you hire people to do those parts between two different systems, which frankly is not one of the most fulfilling tasks or meaningful jobs. And I would say, look at RPA today. They are very sophisticated. They actually can help you transfer cross data. That's one. The other one is for those of you who, especially those with you with IPC status, if you need to look at compliance, again, iShine Cloud has a module that allows you to just file, the records to IRAS for those donors and so on that donates to you. So there are actually assets available, digital assets, whether it's Grab business account or Giving.sg or iShine Cloud, or even internally, RPA. For example, myself in the education sector, which is also a charity, we actually make quite substantial savings by implementing RPA to try and stitch between different systems, move data from one system to another that usually would need 2 or 3 human beings in between. This is when you don't have an integrated system, right? Which is what happens in most of the large charities, all right? But it is not the end-all, be-all. It's something that also makes you think again, why you have certain processes and so on. And hopefully over time, it can significantly improve your productivity within the organization. Thanks.
Thank you. So RPA, Grab Business Account. Now, there's actually a related question that was almost sure to come. Maybe I will start off by asking Mr. Sia first, and then Mr. Christian Chow, and then later I'll circle back to Terence. Yeah? So a lot of elderly clients and even staff are resistant to learning and embracing new technology, right? So how do we encourage clients and staff to embrace digitalization?
For the old folk, is it everybody or just the seniors?
Well, the claim is seniors in this.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
So we are the young seniors now, right? They call it something like that, right? Whatever that means. Okay. I would say that in our experience, also as part of MVPC, one of the things we have found that the human touch is very important when it comes to getting the seniors to adopt. In fact, for that matter, having someone who's a senior engage another senior is actually sometimes better than someone of a different generation. Although it is important, we need to ensure that the seniors and the youth and the younger generation need to have greater engagement. What we've found is that when you have a senior who have gone through the process of adoption, there's a lot of empathy. You know what this person is going through, what kind of fears, what kind of anxieties this person, and this person is actually able to help this senior cope and adopt. It's no different for even not just digital, but dealing with seniors who have retired, who have disrupted, in employment and so on. Getting someone who have gone through it, going through that challenge, to engage them actually makes a lot of sense. So that's just one view that I have. Thank you.
Also give them peer pressure, is it?
Yeah, peer pressure.
If my friend who is 70 can do this, I can do this too.
So for clients that we serve who are seniors, actually the real test came during COVID. So of course, we operate senior activity centers now called active aging centers, and during COVID, you can't meet them in person, right? And so you have two options. One is you do nothing, or two, you really start thinking about how do you engage them digitally and online. And fortunately, I think we did that. In fact, I must say that our seniors, you have to give them a bit more credit. I mean, of course, there are some who are a bit more resistant for various, sometimes very legitimate reasons. But I would say by and large, our seniors are extremely resilient and can be very adaptive. So we have conducted events like, Zoom birthday parties during COVID, where the seniors still get to connect and they learn how to use Zoom, right? We guided them, but over time, they were able to connect with one another over Zoom. We even organized a durian party, where durians were sent to them, but they were all connecting online. So I think for some of this, it is possible to still engage them, but of course there needs to be investment in terms of how do we support them, how do we guide them, how do we allay actually some of the fears, so understanding why they might be resistant, right? Being scammed, and of course they hear all kinds of reports about older people losing all their money because of using digital platforms. So I think for seniors, I think it's something that we should still continue to pursue and not just kind of like give up. Yeah. I think for our own employees and staff, I mean, there will be, it's a journey, right? And I think there will be, when we first started out, even for simple things like, when we try to strengthen our our security measures, we had to introduce OTP, right? And OTP goes into your handphone number. We actually got complaints, they say, hey, why is my personal phone being used for OTP? But I think as we do this over time, now we don't hear any such. I mean, people have been socialized, and so it's part of the journey. So I think as you embark on this digitization journey, my encouragement is that you will, of course, hear people maybe expressing some resistance, some frustration, but expect it, see it as part of the journey, and continue to persevere, because over time, they will be adaptive, right? And they will come to terms with it, and then things will be okay. So don't give up, just because you hear some, resistance, right? But if you believe in it, it's the right thing to do. There's a rational reason behind why you're doing certain things, and after persisting, people will be okay with it. Yeah.
Thank you.
This is a very interesting question, and I think Chin Song had mentioned, and Christian also mentioned it. It's not really a issue with digitalization. It is a issue with we human don't like change. Yeah, and that's the reality. So I just want to share a little bit about my daytime job. I used to take care of organization change management. And why is there such a organization change management kind of role? I'll give you one example. I think all of us have desk phones, right, at one point. And in offices, you have desk phones, all right? So my organization, we have 45,000 employees, and we started the unified communications journey where there is no more desk phone. Everyone will have digital phone either through their laptop, their mobile devices, or anything, and all through headsets, meaning to say no more desk phones. You don't even see desk phones at all in the office. So it is a difficult journey as well. It's not about digitalization. It's not about seniors, right? It's not that. It is just that it is a change to their normal day-to-day approach. So the question really is, how do you prepare them? So in my slide earlier, I mentioned training and preparation is necessary. And to Chin Siong's point earlier, first of all, get your power users come together through some events and all that. They will become your advocates, and empathy, right? The same senior who have used it, when that senior tell another senior, hey, it is okay, it's not that scary, the senior will believe them better. Now, if I try to have my children, they are working adults, talk to a senior, all right, and teach them how to use the mobile phones, I think the senior will be very resistant. But if you have a senior talking to another senior, the senior will be much more open to it. So the power user approach and then the opportunity to prepare and train, I think that will bring you to the outcome that you're looking for.
Thank you. Now, I really liked your slide earlier, the two pictures about the minimum viable product, right? So I was wondering whether you have a case study you could share, or maybe some organization that you have potentially worked with where you have seen them slowly start off with a minimum viable product and then they slowly work their way up, right? And then an extra question for Terence, which is, are there IT projects where the MVP approach doesn't work? Because it's either you take it or you don't take it.
That is a very loaded question. I need to think about that. Okay.
No, or you can answer the second one later.
Anyone have any thoughts before I share my thoughts? Yeah.
So first off is the Giving.sg app. I hope you have it on your phone. Is the launch is an MVP. It's a minimum viable product, but it's actually quite a sophisticated MVP right now. The team right now is running through several sprints to continuously improve. So you see, frequent updates to the app, and that's one example, right? The only time probably you cannot employ agile MVP is when you are buying commercial off-the-shelf COTS software, whether it's SAP, Oracle, or Xero, or what, because those are made already for you. Your approach will be quite different. Your approach will require to do one of two or both changes that you have to make. One, either you change your process to fit the software, or if you cannot change your process because your policy says so, then you change your policy. And that one is just the product is there. And that's what I think, frankly, most organizations don't understand, that sometimes in today's context, you may have to change your organization's policy to the software that you're using, because that company has got hundreds of thousands of customers worldwide. It's not going to customize it for one. But they also have the best practices embedded in the software, so it's better off, in fact, just to rent the software, use it, and if where the policy conflicts, you may have to go and change the policy, and that makes it more cost efficient. Yeah.
Interesting.
I'm not sure whether it's the strict definition of MVP, but I think it captures the principle of being agile, learning to fail forward in a low risk way, quickly, so that you can keep doing better. So our own experience comes in the form of our Salesforce implementation. So Salesforce is a very powerful SaaS, very powerful platform. But we were very aware that as a large organization, if we just implement Salesforce for the whole organization, it will be a massive endeavor, right? And we didn't want to do that. So what we did was we just implemented it for one program. And then knowing that for that one program, it'll be a journey, there'll be learning, there'll be lessons learned in terms of how we design the processes to fit the SaaS, what the SaaS can do, as well as also experiencing how the vendor or the partner will be like. And true enough, our very, very first project was actually the most painful project of and we've done, I think, over 10 Salesforce implementation. The very first one was the most painful. It was so painful because we actually did pick the wrong partner. And I still remember having very difficult conversations with the partner and how we had to kind of break off that relationship. But it provided such rich learning. So after that first project, our second and third project was really much more effective and fast. And over time, now most of the project is done also in-house, because over time we have also developed the ability and the insights in terms of how we should go about doing it. So it's not in a strict definition, but I think the idea of start small, learn from the process, knowing that the first time you're doing it, there will be mistakes. But how then do we take that and then keep learning it forward to every other implementation? And then I think eventually now, we have Salesforce as quite a key component in our digitization effort. Yeah.
Before I answer the question that Inju has asked, I want to address, not address, but rather take on what Christian has mentioned. He mentioned one very important point that I think we all need to have the guts to do it, is to break off that relationship, because that's the intent of agile learning, agile approach. All right, there's an intent to allow you to fail fast and learn fast. So the reality is, if it's not working out, break it. And I'm speaking now really more to the board than the management, because the board must support. Yes, let's recognize that this is the amount that we have lost, but it's a learning. You never really fail a project if you learn from it, even if the project didn't take off. All right, so that's the reality. So I think it's important. The MVP approach really is that we can learn fast, fail fast, and learn fast. So back to Inju's question, so I'm not taking all the time. Maybe I answer the bigger question, have MVP failed? Yes, MVP approach has failed when there is no strategic perspective. So if you are going to implement your MVP in parts with no overview, right? Earlier, we saw the skateboard, then a skateboard with a handle, the bicycle, then the motorbike, then the car. Maybe the question that I'll ask you, do you recognize this whole project, what is it about? It's about transportation. So the thing is, you need to keep your perspective. You need to have an overall strategy. What are you trying to achieve? Then your MVP can have success. If you don't even have a endpoint in mind, and you don't know what you're trying to achieve, then your MVP will have a problem that Chin Siong has mentioned: integration. You need RPA to interchange, or you have to hire two FTE to just do export of data, import of data, export of data, import of data. Then you basically miss the whole journey itself. So then to the question about MVP example, right? I don't really have an example for you, but I will take on Chin Siong's example. I don't know, I mean, Giving.sg is a very easy to implement thing. No cost, you don't own any infrastructure, you don't need to hire a person to handle this. But think about it. Earlier I mentioned, when you embark on a project, ask yourself, the project is for the donor, the beneficiary, or the staff, right? What is the perspective? Then when you embark on Giving.sg, right, really your targeted audience is donors. So you have improved the opportunity for them to donate. Then the next step is, how can you make it more efficient, that the next time round when they come in, you know, and you can identify them. Then you can build some intelligence into your web. When they come into your web, you can already recognize them. You can even approach them, even address them by name. Cookies, we talk about cookies, right? For people who are not familiar with internet security and all that, cookies identify you. So those are the things that you can do to actually improve the whole experience of donor journey. How you identify them, how you encourage them to donate more, how can you even then target fundraiser that are targeted towards the donor's interest, right? So that go back to what Christian has mentioned about the data that you have. He mentioned about the Grab business account that provided data insight to him to allow him to know how is a spend like, which maybe department or organization spend the most, and where is their transportation journey like, how long is the travel and all that. These give you a lot of insights that allow you to further tap into the benefit of digitalization. All right, I hope that gives an idea of what works or don't. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you for answering my loaded question. Yeah, that is very nice, because I think you talked about the idea of how far you actually should go eventually, right? Because the question is, do we even need a car, right? Maybe you don't want to go the entire stretch, yeah. And to Christian's point, I think also maybe this MVP is like minimum viable process in your kind of conception. Mr. Sen, yeah, please.
Sorry to interrupt you
Go
again. I thought I want to just kind of weigh in here on also what are the pitfalls when you go agile. Most of you will be very familiar with defining your requirements. This is the scope. Get someone to bid for it, get a price, make your tender evaluation or whatever, RFP evaluation, and then you award. When you go agile, you haven't really figured out your requirements yet. It's continuous improvement. So instead of saying, these are my requirements at the start, I will meet you at the UAT site, user acceptance test. The user is actually involved in the sprints, multiple, incremental improvements throughout. And you do not know exactly what's your end answer, as what Terence figured. This is one area where most people are not quite familiar how to actually budget. And I've been right now involved in a very big HR project. And sometimes, you can go off by so much, right? But that's a humongous organization. I won't mention who is it. But that's one of the pitfalls because it doesn't give you that certainty. What it gives you is agility. And agility is useful when there's uncertainty. Okay? But most IT projects are uncertain by its nature. Unless, of course, you are implementing a commercial off-the-shelf software. You know this is what you're going to get, right? There's nothing to be to talk about. Use this, but how to use it. But if you are going to do something new, then I think the whole agile, not just the team, but all the way to the board must have an agile mindset. Right? Because the board may say, what are you doing? You have to just do it this way, and there you go, we are misaligned again. And I found that in some cases, in some organizations, because of regulation, they cannot be too agile because certain things needs to be approved by the regulators. So you cannot just say, I keep releasing one version after another because you need to submit to regulatory approval. They are stuck. They cannot go agile. They go back to the traditional way. But in charities, I think most of you are quite okay, and most of you are very agile, right? Yes? Okay. So I think you can try and do that. But you got to kind of measure the risk as well. Okay?
Can I? Yeah. So maybe not necessarily MPV, but what we've done also in Care Corner, our one of the more recent projects, is to introduce prototypes, right? So these are prototypes, not really for real use, but we wanted to field test a certain product. So what we have been exploring is the use of actually generative AI for the purpose of social workers working with clients. And what we're using this for is, of course, in the background, they are kind of like transcribing, the conversations. And the intent here is to use AI to summarize the entire case so that it facilitates in the preparation of the case notes, which takes up a lot of time. But beyond that, the game changer for us is with AI, they are able to also pick up what the caseworker might be missing out. So as they are processing the transcript, they might be picking up on certain things that, hey, the worker did not ask this question. So before you end the conversation, here are some things for you to consider. So the worker is being now augmented by AI to provide better conversations with the client. Now this is all, firstly, conceptually, it was great, and the team did a fabulous job. They put up a prototype. They tested it in a very clean environment, with people simulating the conversation, in one of the rooms. Worked out very well. Then they started to say, let's field test it a little, right? And so they went out to a home. Again, not a real client because this is still prototype, but pretend, get a friend to pretend. And then they realized a few things. Firstly, ambient noise creates a lot of problem. Secondly, most locals don't speak just pure English. It's a splattering, English, Singlish, dialect. And so then later we start seeing that, hey, actually, there's still a long way to go. But that's the learning for us. Now we know that, okay, we have to solve this issue of when you go into the field, there's all these issues around the ambient noise. Can the AI learn to deal with that over time, right? And then of course, Singlish as an issue. Who can we go to that will help us kind of like journey with us to fix that problem? But that's an example of trying something out, field testing it, you know, and then seeing what we can do before actually embarking on a very ambitious project of doing it. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, we have time for maybe one last question. So the question here is, SaaS can be hosted anywhere globally, so it can be challenging to adhere to data residency requirements. Do you have any advice on this or comments?
I can take a stab and then maybe the rest can give input. I think most of these SaaS providers out there, they understand about data privacy and that some data cannot cross boundary and all that, they are aware. And you can dictate that data do not move outside of Singapore. You can, for most vendors out there. So I'll just stop there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they are already shifting their position. In the past, they used to say, look, you know, we're based, our data center is in the US, in parts of Asia. But they now realize their sensitivities to this. So they are now shifting their position. So they're setting up the data center here. Like, you know, Amazon is now having theirs in Singapore. So the SaaS that's on Amazon is resident in Singapore.
Yeah, nothing to add. Yeah, I think the systems that we use now, they now have the cloud servers here hosted. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. Can you please put your hands together to help me thank our great panelists?